Hello and welcome back to the OnlyAccies podcast. Today is all about transfers. We are bang in the middle of the January transfer window, so we will be looking at players we think Accies should be targeting. We've got some suggestions from yourself, so thank you from Twitter and YouTube comments and all that stuff. We'll also be talking about the three players we already have in and will they make an impact to the team. Some already have, but will we see more of others? So, let's start with the Dunfermline game, where not much needs to be said in that. It was an absolute battering, not in scoreline, but how we played. Dunfermline were by far the better team. And Brandon, you were saying how that game alone highlighted how much we need more players in, both for squad depth and just quality of players as well. So what do you make of that game and why does that highlight the need for more players?
The midfield just completely get overrun. You've got Vertanen and Hughes as your midfield too. That is not a good enough midfield for any League One Scottish side, never mind a Championship side. So I think that signifies why we need players in midfield. But yeah, we've went to Dunfermline and we already touched on it that we weren't that confident. If we want to be looking up the league, we need to be beating teams like that. And the players just showed that they're too inconsistent, and maybe it's the age of them, maybe it's because how inexperienced they are as a squad, and it shouts out to me that you need a bit more depth within the squad and a bit more experience throughout.
And one player we did get to see was one of our new signings, Kai Kennedy. Kai Kennedy, David, is somebody that you've been kind of harping on at the club to sign for the last 2 years. You're a big fan of Kai Kennedy. It's been brought into question a little bit about the deal that we've done though. A 6-month loan deal for a winger, which arguably is one of the positions we really don't need any more players in. But we've brought him in a 6-month loan deal. What do you make of the player, and then what do you make of the deal?
I think it's a good signing. He's a good player. I remember seeing him on, I think it was one of the Friday night games on BBC when he was playing for Inverness, and he totally stole the show. He looked really confident taking men on. He really comfortable on the ball, really direct, and it is someone that I always thought him and Lewis Smith together would be brilliant for the Accies. At this time now, though, he's a Rangers player, so he'll be on good wages, like really good wages. Any deal, like I always wrote us off for ever getting someone like Kai Kennedy. I've said that to you before, because there's no way we could afford even a portion of this guy's wages. The fact that we've went and done that and committed that kind of money to a player like that shows that we've got the money there to get that quality kind of player. But like you've said, it's not a position we need. So granted, signing Kai Kennedy's great, and I think he's got a point to prove and hopefully does well for us. But I would like to see those kind of resources put into someone we actually really badly need. Like you said, that Dunfermline game is... the midfield was just anonymous, so lightweight. Yeah, we do have good options on the wing, but we're absolutely desperate for, definitely, I would say, most in the middle of the park.
Brandon, something that was pointed out at the Kai Kennedy point was, if this deal was done in the summer, it would maybe be more interesting, but the fact it's only a 6-month loan deal is underwhelming, and as David said, not something that we necessarily need.
It's a bit of a weird one because it kind of does seem like just a signing for the sake of it. It's a position that we don't really need, which says a lot because the squad is really lacking in depth, but wingers isn't the position which we ultimately need. We are graced with big depth within that position, and it's weird because it's a 6-month loan, maybe someone that has to prove himself, but it's also potentially then blocking some players that are like products of our youth academy that we are trying to sort of give them the opportunity in the Championship to sort of showcase what they're capable of. But we've signed him when arguably you could say that it's kind of pointless because we're bringing him in for a 6-month loan. The only thing we're really playing for is to stay in the league. Don't get me wrong, he's a really good player, and on his day he's capable of probably winning you a game on his own. But it would have been nicer for us to invest either on someone permanently or maybe pushing it out to try and get a longer loan deal for him, because a 6-month loan deal, it kind of sort of goes against everything that we've been hearing from Taylor and the club about wanting to bring in both players for the future to because this is a work in progress, and also bring in, we were told before this window that the ultimate aim was to bring in sort of experience to sort of steady the ship as such, which I don't think any of the three we've brought in as experience as such within the sort of where we are just now, because you could maybe argue O'Reilly, but in the context of experience of the Scottish Championship, I wouldn't say yes.
Well, let's talk about Daniel O'Reilly. I know we mentioned him in a previous episode, but he's came in and he's made a good start. He's kind of worked well with the defence. He's played in a 4 and he's obviously most recently played in a 3. He was part of that incredible goal we scored as well. But he's made a very decent start, and people so far, myself included, are happy with the signing and can hopefully see him progress further. David, what have you made of Daniel O'Reilly since he came in? I know I've spoken to Brandon about it before, but what are your thoughts?
No, I think he looks good. I think he looks quite accomplished. Looks kind of ready-made, and he's slotted in really well, really quickly. Obviously, when you go back to the Queen of South game and that amazing goal, all starts from a pass from the back, and it's nice to see that instead of just an aimless punt up. So it looks like he's got a bit about him, and like you say, he's ready to jump in, so that it doesn't look like there'll be any worries about his kind of nerve or his ability or anything like that. So I think it's fairly positive. We have had signings in the past where, because we've had so many that are, let's face it, rotten, and you kind of have the bad early signs where there has been a few players within there where you just know straight away, yeah, they're going to be decent, and you kind of get those impressions already for O'Reilly. So no, I'm happy with it.
And another player, our third player of the January window so far, is Ellis Brown. Very, as we've spoken about before, Brandon, very little information found on Ellis Brown. He got his debut against Queen of the South, nearly scored, but seems to be a player that we will kind of grow into, and he's not somebody to come straight into the team right now, but maybe something that can help us, with the squad depth, and obviously if somebody gets injured or something goes out or something, he'll be able to play some kind of cover.
Bit of a weird one again, because as we were told, we're looking for experience, because that's what the board and the manager felt was lacking within the squad. As far as we can see online, he's a winger as well. That's his most comfortable position. We don't really know much about him. So it was a very weird one, which is, and what Taylor said was, there's no point in signing someone just for the sake of it, and we only will sign them if they're the right person and we think that they're going to better us off. Judging, you can't really judge them by now, but judging what we know, is it really someone that betters us? I don't think you can say it is, but it'd be harsh to criticise when we've not really saw him. But on paper, it's not exactly someone that ticks the boxes that we're apparently meant to be doing this window and in the next window. But I'm sure we'll soon see.
Well, listen, let's look to players that we think we should be bringing in. Still, 2 weeks left the January window, so still plenty of time. We've went away between ourselves and we have got our own list of players we think Accies should be targeting. There are in assigned positions. We've got a goalkeeper, a right back, midfielder and a striker. Those positions we've agreed need strengthened. We've asked for your suggestions as well. I said at the beginning on Twitter and that, so we'll be throwing some of them into the discussion too. But let's just start with the back. Let's start with the keepers. David, let's start with you. Who is a keeper that you think Accies should be signing?
See, this was the one position where I was kind of reluctant to put the effort to look in the targets, because I don't see them getting another keeper. I don't. I think that once Hilton's loan's done, they'll promote Jamie Smith and start working on him. I do think we desperately need a signed number one that we'll have for the next few years. I don't think they'll go for it, but one that I've thought of was Gary Woods. At Aberdeen, obviously former Accies. When he left us, it was because he wanted to, I believe he had a young family and he wanted to move back down south to be closer to family, and then all of a sudden he's loaned back up to Aberdeen. I think he's there permanently, and now his deal's up in the summer. So I think you need tried and tested. I think we've taken for granted over the last few years how solid we have been in that position. And now for the last couple of years, it's really been a weakness for us. We just don't have any kind of commanding presence in goal, no stability. No one I think we can rely on to kind of, like you say, you've got the goal scorers that won the game for you, but in the past we've also had goalkeepers that have won points for us as well, and I just don't think we've got that kind of assurance. So someone like Gary Wood's experienced, knows the club, definitely somebody I'd be happy to see back at Hamilton.
Mine's is, I think I've saw someone mention it as well, and it's very similar to David's. Mine's another former Hamilton keeper, slightly older, Michael McGovern. Michael still has properties in Hamilton. My sort of logic behind this one is, yeah, he's on a good wage down at Norwich, probably at the very, very, very end of his career. I can see Jamie Smith, from what the small amount of game time I've saw him, both for the first team and the youth, I think that's a player which does have a future with us. I think bringing in that experienced head and goals, both for the last part of this season and next season, will give Jamie Smith the platform to maybe get better as well, but also it sort of steadies the ship with our current goalkeeper situation, and also adds someone that already knows the club and adds a bit of experience, a bit of composure at the back, someone that can talk to the sort of more inexperienced players. And yeah, that was my sort of logic behind it. I think the logic behind Gary Woods is very similar to that as well. I just feel like the goalkeeper position is something that we've always had biggest strengths, if not our best position. And for the past couple of seasons, when we've not been at a certain level, it's because the goalkeeper hasn't been at a certain level. So I think if we improve on that, we bring in someone that's experienced, someone that doesn't necessarily need to have played with Accies, but has played at a similar level and has excelled. I just think we're better going with someone that's experienced rather than an inexperienced goalkeeper for the very near future anyway, until we develop Jamie Smith into what he's getting promised to be of a decent level.
Oh, Alan on Twitter shared your enthusiasm for Michael McGovern. I believe he said, "Break the bank, get McGovern in." So he follows your same motive. I've gone slightly different. I've gone with somebody from English League 2. I've gone with Adam Smith, 29 years old, and he's currently at Stevenage. His contract's up at the end of January. He was only brought in on a short-term deal at Stevenage, only for the 6 months. He's currently played 9 games in the league. He's kept 3 clean sheets. He's very much their third choice keeper, but he's got over 350 appearances in League 1 and 2. So very experienced in that sense. He's got Scottish family. And he said publicly that he wants a number 1 spot, and he's even willing to relocate to get it. In those 350 appearances, he's kept 60 clean sheets as well. So somebody that I think, like Kai Kennedy, has a point to prove. As I said, it's only a short-term deal, so we won't have to pay a fee. His contract's up to the 31st. So somebody maybe on a free transfer, as I said, he's got Scottish family and he's willing to relocate for a number 1 spot. So he interested me, just especially what he was saying in the press. So that's our 3 options. Obviously, we've had Alan suggest Michael McGovern. Another player that was suggested from Callum on Twitter was Connor Hazard from Celtic, 23 years old. Obviously, that would need to be a loan. I'm assuming we're not going to be spending money for Connor Hazard, but what do you guys make of that? Is Connor Hazard a player you'd like to see at Accies, and is it a realistic signing?
I think I would like to see us kind of stay away from the loan signings. I think the issue that we have is we don't have a backbone of the squad just now. So I think we need to start bringing in players that are going to be with us for the next couple of years. Because even then, the star players we've had in the past few years, even the ones that have been permanent signings, like your Ross Callahans and Hakeem Adoffins, they've left within a year. I'd like to see us get someone who would be here for at least the next 18 months. I think if I was picking any, Brandon's option, Michael McGovern, would be perfect. I don't think, touching on Alan's tweet, I don't think it would be a break the bank situation. Like Brandon said, the guy's at the very end of his career. You probably find that he'll want to go out with playing as many games as possible if he's got interest in Hamilton already. And like you say, he knows that if it comes to Hamilton, he'll play every game. But to kind of go back to the Connor Hazard suggestion, it would be a good signing, but it would have to be a loan, and it just doesn't solve the problem. It just puts it back to a year's time and then we're left in the same position. I think we need our own number one.
And just to piggyback off the back of that, Ian HAFC on Twitter also suggested Ross Laidlaw for Ross County, 29 years old, obviously knows the Scottish Leagues very well, but is currently, he's been in a handful of games for Ross County so far this season. Brandon, what do you make of that suggestion?
It's a keeper that whenever I've seen him, he's not particularly stood out for me. It is a realistic one probably, but it's not one that I think is going to solve our problems in the keeper position. Going back on the sort of Hazard one, I think that's quite an interesting one. I think the way in which Celtic are going with their goalkeepers at the present moment, I don't think he's actually going to have a chance there anymore. They've just signed Scott Bain on a new deal, so that's probably their third choice keeper. Conor Hazard, if his career was ending at Celtic, another one that maybe has a point to prove, maybe starting his career off at Accies, being a first team keeper, could be like a sort of platform to show why he was at Celtic. 23 is a young age for a keeper, but I agree, if we're going to bring in a keeper, definitely stay away for the loan moves and bring in someone that is going to be your own keeper. And I think I definitely think that just getting an experienced head within that position is the best route we can go down. And I think the three options we gave are all experienced heads that have had first team experience at good level. A couple of them know the game up here well. So just getting an experienced number one, and hopefully that can help nurture Jamie Smith come through, because I think in the not so near future he will be our number one.
All right, interesting. Let's look at right back, somewhere that our love child, I mention every podcast, Jamie Hamilton's been playing, but it is so obvious that we need an out-and-out right back there. We had Luke Matheson, that's not gone well. He's been loaned to Scunthorpe or something it is. We only found out on Twitter the other day, but right backs. I'll start because mine is fairly generic. I've gone with Cammy Ballantyne for Montrose, 24 years old. Obviously, Montrose are performing very, very well right now. He's consistently in that team. He's very, really out it. He's been highly rated by Montrose fans, and he's getting tipped to make a step up in his career. Now, obviously, Montrose have an opportunity to go up to the Championship, so at the end of the season, it could be very well that he's in the same league as us. But if not, I think Accies should really, really be going out and getting Cammy Ballantyne. From what I've seen of him this season, he's performed very, very well. I've spoke to a few Montrose fans on Twitter, and they cannot rate him highly enough. They do expect a club to come in for him, though, and for him to make that next step. But they said that will not happen until the end of the season. But Cammy Ballantyne is somebody that I think Accies should be looking at very seriously. Brandon, what is your choice for right back?
See, this is a hard one, and I've saw people obviously giving us pelters because we've been saying to have Jamie Hamilton right back or Jamie Hamilton and holding midfield, which that's not his natural position, right? But when your squad is so lacking in depth and the players that you've got at your disposal aren't that good, is the best way to put it. That's why we are saying, why don't you try something else? Why don't you try Jamie Hamilton? If it's not worked, fair enough. But I've really struggled for the right back. One player that I had when we initially spoke about going to this was, I know we said let's try and not go to the loan market, but right back is a really tough one. Someone I had was Jamie Brandon for Hearts. Another person that I've got is, it just looks like I've not done a lot of research. You should go and get is Lee Hodgson. I think he's fell down the pecking order again at Kilmarnock. I think they've signed a couple of players. Obviously they've signed Ash Taylor and whatnot, and then they've got, he just doesn't seem to be getting a game at right back. I thought we should have signed him in the summer, and I think there was talk that we were going to get him, and because we left it so late in Kilmarnock, we're just firing money here, there and everywhere at players, regardless if they had suitable players in that position or not. He's obviously got a move to there. Lee Hodgson's the one I'd go for. We know he's one of those players that last season he was always a 7 out of 10, if you know what I mean. He was always what's the best word for it? He was
consistent.
He was consistent, he was reliable. He's not someone that sort of gets you off your feet, but we would be able to get him if we went for him. I'm sure Kilmarnock don't see us as sort of title challengers with them. If he's not going to, he obviously must live local. I see him at the gym doing Hamilton quite a lot. So just go and get Lee Hodgson and give him what he wants. And I highly doubt it's breaking the bank by getting him in as well.
I've got two. The first one, to kind of jump on the back of Brandon's, I do think Lee Hodgson would be a good one. Like he said, it was the way I would describe him as no nonsense. He kind of does his job. He is a kind of solid 7 out of 10. He won't kind of stand out. I've got someone in a similar light, which is Keith Watson from Ross County. Again, a guy with huge experience in Scottish football. One of those, when you kind of look at him, he is a kind of no-nonsense. He'll give you a 6, 7 out of 10. And I think he is kind of what we're missing with just that kind of experience and solid at right back. The second option is the one I'm more excited about, though. And that actually only came to mind on Saturday, and that was Aaron Comrie at Dunfermline. Again, a young player. I think he's only 22, 23, but he really stood out on Saturday. He kind of reminded me a lot of Alan McGowan, the old kind of attacking fullback that we really excelled at having. That was the kind of first time we had a player like that with Alan McGowan, and it really did benefit the way we played in the team a lot. And I think since he left, we've really missed that kind of avenue down the right-hand side. He might be available if they're in relegation trouble, but at the same time, if they do go down, they might want to keep any form of quality they have, so they might make him an offer that they can't refuse. But a guy like that, or even the likes of Regan Tumulty.
Regan Tumulty was on my list for a while as well. And then I just thought the way Wraith are performing, I know they're taking a dip at the moment, but like they're going to be up there. They may not go up, but they'll be up there anyway, and I can't see Regan taking that on my list.
The thing that makes this so hard in what we're doing is there's so many players that if we were to go away and play Football Manager on a laptop, I would be able to sign them. But if we're being realistic, Accies aren't going to go and sign these players. We'd be just getting our hopes up for absolutely nothing, which makes it so hard because there is so many players which, when you've said Regan Tumulty and you've said Alan Comrie, if I was starting my Football Manager career with Accies this season, they're probably the two type of players that I would actually go and sign. And it makes complete sense because the players that are in division just now, that they're not that young, but they're getting to probably the peak of their career, and they're showing great potential. And it would be the sort of platform that we're always mentioned that Accies always give the players platform to then go better themselves. And I totally agree they'd be great players to sign, but just try to be realistic about it is what makes doing something like this so hard.
I think, all the players I've looked at today, I don't think any of them are particularly realistic. It's just not the way we operate. When you see teams like Livingston that always picked up the best players from the league below or those around them, and it benefits them, that's the way I've always wanted us to do our transfers, but it's just not how it's going to happen. So a lot of these are going to be unrealistic, really.
Well, let's look at midfield next. That's a position that arguably with strikers are most important, and as we touched on at the start, is highlighted again by the result against Dunfermline. Brandon, let's start with you this time. Midfielder, one or two players.
I've went for two. One is one that I'm sure we'll talk about for quite some length, but the other one I've went for was Morton midfielder Kyle Jacobs. It's someone that's an experienced head. He's a captain in Morton just now. We clearly are lacking in just the majority of our squad is so young and inexperienced that we need people to come in, especially within that position, level, sort of stronger head, sort of be able to talk to the younger players around about them. And I just felt that Jacobs, he's been given the captain role at Morton for a reason, and he's been throughout the sort of Scottish game.
Kyle Jacobs was the one you mentioned last year as well, wasn't it?
Yes, along with Rafe's fucking full squad. I mentioned him last season. I don't think at this point he was actually the captain at Morton. I think it might have just been this season he's been made the captain, but it's someone that's clearly he's captain for a reason. He must obviously help the Morton squad, or else he wouldn't get made the captain. He's been about the game for a long period of time. Not particularly the best footballing players, or else he would be at a better club than Morton. But we don't particularly just need to look for people with ability at the present moment. We need people that would be good for the changing room, and I think he'd be one. And he would be a realistic one as well, because I don't see him being in that big a wage at Morton. And like I said, he has been about a few different clubs in Scotland, and maybe he wants to sort of have a new opportunity for currently being at Morton. And he's out of contract in the summer.
Like you said though, I mean, when you're talking about his ability, it might not be like have the most ability, but I think if a guy like that had come into our team, I think he would stick out like a sore thumb. He would just, the experience that he has and the kind of composure and savvy he has for the league that he's in, I think he would stick out. So he might not be able to like ping passes like Alex Neil, but I think he would excel in our team just because of those other characteristics. It's not just all, like you said, all about the ability. It's probably unrealistic knowing Hamilton, but not unrealistic with the stature of the club, the way that the teams that these guys play for. And then you look at their contract situation. I've kind of split into two categories. Top category, which is absolute problem solver, but completely unrealistic. And then I've got realistic, maybe might not necessarily fill everybody with confidence if we were to get them in, but I think they could do better. The first one, which is the unrealistic, is Alec Gogic, a guy we don't really need to talk about too much. We all loved him. He was a brilliant player. What we've always said is exactly what we were missing when he left. Obviously, Hakeem Adolphin kind of filled that void, but someone who isn't getting any games at Hibs anymore, knows the club well, and I think he would come straight back in and solve the issues we've got in the midfield. It would be simple as that, but obviously wages, his maybe actual desire to come back to a team like Hamilton, I don't see that being realistic at all. But if we've got any type of ambition to go forward and actually get out of this league, that's the kind of player that teams like Kilmarnock or whoever comes down from the SPL, they'll look at a player like Alex Gogic. It is unrealistic, but I don't think it should be, if that's a good way to put it.
It is unrealistic, but really it shouldn't be that unrealistic. He left us when the sort of COVID was just becoming a thing. It was apparently the period of time when we actually offered people
less
wages than they were even on. And Gogic was one of the players at the time, was probably one of our best players, and we've offered them less wages. So he's went to Hibs, and he'd have got better wages, but I don't think it would have been that different. There's not many Accies fans that you'll find that didn't think he was a good player. He got on with everybody, had a good relationship on social media. Someone coming back to fix a problem, that's probably where our massive problem is. It's in that midfield when we have zero experience, and we've got nobody to sort of talk to the players around them and sort of compose the full team. And Gogic would do that.
So the other two, I've got the first one is Andy Murdoch for Ayr United, ball winning, battling midfielder, maybe not necessarily the most ability in the world, but he's been at Ayr United for years now. I think back when they were in League One as well. He's got a ton of experience, and he'll have more about him. I remember seeing him when we played on the Friday night game, and even just physically, when you compare him to the likes of Ronan Hughes and Regan Mimno, it would be in a similar light to the Kyle Jacobs signing, where it might not necessarily be a total step up in quality, but just experience, the physicality he has in comparison, and I just think he'd be a lot more of an assured choice and really would steady up the midfield.
I think that would be similar, as you said, to sort of Kyle Jacobs, a player that's played in the Championship majority of his career. He obviously started his career at Rangers, and then I think it was Morton, then he's went to Ayr when Hopkins went to Ayr. So it's a player that's knows the league well, and it's the type of player that probably not the most gifted technically or whatnot, but it's the type of player we need in the midfield. I think the word in which you always hear about our midfield is it's too powder puff, and that is the case.
The other one that I have, Charlie Telfer at Falkirk, a guy who's actually been around Scottish football for a while. He's still relatively young. I think, again, he's about mid-20s, the kind of box-to-box type. He's had his on and off periods in that Falkirk team. But again, when you look at the way that they're going, I don't think that would be a completely unrealistic one to get. We need to start developing the spine of the team again and getting some kind of better options in midfield, because if you to tell a couple of fans that we would be starting a league game with Regan Mimnall and Nolan Hughes, it's just not what we're looking for. So they're the options that I've came up with.
My first choice, I think, is Brandon's second choice, Kerr McInroy. Obviously, he's on the younger side. We talked a lot about experience, but I've gone for two kind of young players. Obviously, he's 21 years old. His parent club is Celtic, but he's been on loan for the first half of the season to Airdrie. Airdrie are desperate. There's never a day that goes by that they're not in the news trying to get him back in. So they rate him highly. Airdrie fans rate him highly. Did very, very well in the first half of the season. And he was a player that supposedly we had tied up. He was done. He was in Accies, and then new manager comes in, Brian Rice leaves, and that deal seems to fall apart. But I myself spotted him at New Douglas Park a good few times. I know a few other fans did as well. So his contract's up in the summer, but from the way he's speaking in the media, he's kind of wants to get it done now in January and get his new club sorted and not have to go out and loan for the second half and then worry about what's happening in the summer. So it wouldn't cost Accies much money because he's only got 6 months left. Celtic aren't interested in having him. I don't see why Accies can't just go out and get him now. Like I said, there's been interest previously, so why can we not just get that finished given how well he was doing at Airdrie for the first half of the season?
A very good friend of mine is one of the physios at Airdrie, and he said numerous times to me that throughout this year in training, he's the guy in that squad that's the absolute step above. He says he's got an absolute wand on him. Like you've seen a couple of times this season already, he's scored some absolute howlers, but he's doing this in training consistently. He just has a lot more quality about him. So that I think that would be a great one. Out of the kind of options, I would be really, really chuffed with that. Good quality player, someone who definitely has potential to go higher up as well. When we first heard about the rumours, we didn't really know too much about him, but we've seen them absolutely excel at Airdrie. So I'd be happy with that one. It's just, like I say, the previous deal on the table kind of puts it in doubt for me.
I think the way in which Dave's describing him, obviously his mate, the physio, has spoke about him. He's always standing out in training. I'm sure he probably does want to be playing full time. Something's obviously happened. It was apparently a done deal. He was the first name I think that any one of us three heard we were linked with in the summer at all. He's shown that he's a class above League One. I think you just go and get him off on a full time deal and give him what he wanted the first time around, if not a bit more now, because he's obviously showcased that he is capable of excelling at a good level. Although it's not someone that is of the experienced nature that we were saying, I still think because the type of player he is, a sort of Rolls Royce midfielder, just a box to box player that's good at sort of picking the ball up, doing the dirty work, and also he can score a really good goal or two. Regardless of his age, I think it's a player that we should be definitely going for. My
second choice is one that I think I ribbed for a wee bit. Because he's 21 years old and he's from the Irish League. So I've went for Bohemians midfielder Dawson Devoy, right? 21 years old. He's the young player of the year for their league, the Irish League. When I looked this guy up, there is an Irish journalist who did a whole breakdown video of Dawson Devoy on YouTube, and it was a really interesting watch, actually. He reminds me a lot of Greg Docherty. The type of player he is, box to box. Scored 3 goals last season, but as I said, because he reminds me of Greg Docherty, he's not a guy who's going to get his goals, but he has an unbelievable engine in the midfield, won't stop running, seems to have a bit about him as well. Highly rated over there. He's already in the Irish under-21s team, and he's getting linked with moves to England, lower leagues and that as well. So I reckon with obviously the links that Stuart Taylor has in Ireland is possibly somebody we could convince to come over into Accies. I know you guys will know nothing about him, and that's fair enough. But he's a player that the more research I did into him, the more interested I got, and kind of the more I'd be very, very happy if he joined.
If he's half the player Greg Docherty is, then I go sign.
A few suggestions for the fans and midfielders. There was a fair few of these. Rhys Barrett suggested Scott Allen from Hibs. Obviously, not getting the game time at Hibs. He's been linked with Dundee this window as well. So, you know, it looks like a loan move could be coming out of there. James Shields followed along with Alex Gogic, so he's in the same boat as us. He sees that as a realistic signing. Ian McFarlane is somebody, as I made a suggestion I want to talk about, is Josh Todd from Queen of the South. Played against us, obviously, whenever they've played. Doesn't set the world alight, but as an option in midfield, do you guys think that's anything worth looking into? All right, cool. So let's go back.
I was waiting, David.
So let's look to the next one. Regan Hendry, 23 years old from Forest Green, obviously made his name at Wraith Rovers, moved down to England, has not been in the squad for Forest Green. We don't know what's happening down there, but Scott mentioned Regan Hendry. Do you reckon there's any possibility of Regan coming back up to Scotland?
Not to Accies.
Definitely coming back to Scotland, but you're talking bottom 6 SPL at least.
He's an absolute machine. Not a chance in hell. I would bite your arm off him, but
brilliant player, but not a chance for us.
Well, let's look at strikers then. This is a position, God knows how long we've been talking about trying to get a striker in. Brandon, we'll start with you though first.
It's a really hard one because there is, you can go and do your research and finding an experienced striker that scored goals here and there, or finding any striker that scored goals, but you don't think shouldn't they be unrealistic, but they probably are unrealistic. I've went with one of mine being Lee Connolly for Queen of the South. The logic behind mine is Queen of the South seem to always find a fairly decent striker, and then he tends to sort of move on to another club. Lyndon Wright's been a very good example of that. Lee Connolly started his career off at Sunderland. He's now up here at Queen of the South. He's Queen of the South's top goal scorer. I think he's out of contract in the summer. I just feel it's one of the players that, if we need to be realistic, it is a realistic signing. But it would also be one that would make his money, because I think we'd be like a sort of stepping stone for him to go off to better and bigger things eventually. It's hard because we want someone that's going to score goals, and my next one's even more unrealistic than him. But I think realistically it's someone we could sign. It's someone that clearly knows how to score goals. He's still fairly young, and it just adds more options to a strike power up top.
I think Lee Connolly is a brilliant suggestion for Brandon, because one of the other things to point out is he's scoring a fair number of goals in a terrible team. We've said ourselves that, no disrespect, but Queen of the South have been our kind of free pass this season, where even when we've been terrible and at points in the season, we've always seemed to be fairly comfortable against them. Lee Connolly has stood out in a bad team, which kind of speaks volumes of probably how much potential you actually would have around better players. So I would be delighted with that, and I think it is a really realistic suggestion. I've got a lot of strikers written down. They're probably, you could be broken up into 3 tiers, where it is just the completely unrealistic, realistic that probably could do well, and then the ones that just straight up would get not a good response for supporters, but I think could actually do well, because that's, to me, that third tier is where we're operating. Any striker that we sign isn't going to be on form, isn't going to be scoring goals at the moment. It will be someone who can grow into our team, and it's going to be underwhelming. So that's the kind of realistic tier. The first one that I kind of come up with, Tommy Adderley for United. I remember the League Cup game at the start of the season in the group stage, and I thought he looked really raw. Anytime I've seen him, to be fair, he's looked really raw. I think he's someone who could maybe excel a bit more at Hamilton. I think, again, I would like to see us make some more permanent signings. I think he could do well.
Tommy Adderley was my second choice as well.
See these type of, this is, I need a button in this one, because I bet you, so see if there's, try and find an Air fan podcast, I bet you they're saying the exact same about Moyle. See if we sign Tommy Adderley, see the amount of abuse David Moyle gets, I bet you he'd get the same, because they're the exact same carbon copy type of player. It's just because he's not your player, you think that he's better than the player you've got. That's I see it. I think it's the same with the boy up top for Morton.
He's on my list as well.
See, we're always shouting about, we should sign them. He looks like a real handful. See, when you look at the opposition fans, they say the exact same. It's a tough one, because I've already said a championship striker. You've said one there, and then Ben's about to give us another one. So it's a bit of a tough one to go down. But I'll leave that on that one, because I knew Adderley was going to be one. I knew it, and I absolutely rotten.
I've got 1, 2, 3. I've got 6
I mean, can you tell David loves the transfer windows, by the way?
I do.
See when he whipped the notepad and went, I've split it into 3 tiers. Aye, very good.
To be fair, some of mine are good. Like you say,
Some of mine are good.
Some of mine are good, by the way.
But they're good suggestions, because see what Brandon said at the start of the podcast, when it's unrealistic but it shouldn't be.
Yeah.
That's a kind of a category in itself. Right,
so give us one more. Give us another one of your strikers.
What category do you want to go with? Another one that I think I'll go for my completely unrealistic one, and that's Eamon Brophy. He is out of contract at St Mirren.
I can see why you put it as incredibly unrealistic.
Well, is it? Because for Hamilton, it probably is. He's out of contract at St Mirren. I don't think he's had a great season at all. Talks about his attitude for years, even when he was at Hamilton. He had a great time at Kilmarnock at one point, but then it's kind of failed to deliver on the back of that. Is he going to get another SPL club? That could be the kind of move that Brophy needs. Somewhere where he is just declining, and then if he maybe, for example, came back to Hamilton, he could find his feet and then get himself a move. But he's someone that isn't performing. He's living off a reputation that he's not delivering on anymore. It shouldn't be that unrealistic. If we're a championship team looking to progress up the league and get promotion, then these are the type of players, if they're available, you should be looking at.
I can understand the logic behind what David's saying. I think he'll kick on at St Mirren soon enough. I think he's been tied with injuries, but I saw on Twitter fairly recently that the fans were dying for him to be back. So I understand the logic, but I think that's one that's out with the question.
All right, well, I'll give my second suggestion and we'll see what you guys think. So I've put this player on because I heard through the grapevine that Accies were in for a striker from this guy's team. Now, looking at the team, it's either him or a striker who scores 0 goals in 20 games.
It'll be him then.
So this is what I was going to say was, if it's not this guy, then we're in big trouble. But I've gone for Macaulay Langstaff, 24 years old from Gateshead. So I was told basically the rumour was that Accies were in for a striker from Gateshead. I mean, you look it up, this is the guy that stands out. As I said, only 24 years old. So far this season, he scored 16 goals in 20 games. He's been looked at by a few teams I know down in England. This is the rumours that are going around. So his name is getting around here. And there's very few clips of him because he plays in the National League. There's kind of very few kind of clips you can find of him. But the ones I have been able to find, he's very, very quick. He reminds me a little bit of a younger Andy Ryan. So very quick, likes to be in the box, clinical when he gets it. I put him on the list because I heard this rumour. And I looked into him a wee bit and thought, if we were to bring this guy in, the record he's got in the National League, you know, we've signed players from non-league before. Look at David Moyle, who didn't have a great record, is doing better now. You know, you get likes of Mikael Miller, who's came up and did really well for us as well. I think dipping back into that market is probably a good way. You know, David talks about other teams, you know, dipping into other leagues, like Livingston dipping into the lower Scottish leagues. Teams like Motherwell dip into non-league England very, very well and get really, really good players. And I think if we were to go and get Macaulay Langstaff, as Brandon just touched on, he's got a decent record in the National League, but he's also only 24, so he's got plenty of room to grow and improve. So I reckon he comes in there. I do think he improves that strikers.
I tried to look at strikers from the National League and find ones that I thought were realistic options, because you know you sign these players from the National League and they're always going to see teams in Scotland, whether it be the top tier or if it's a championship, as a stepping stone to sort of better off their career, which ultimately it will be. Majority of players that come from there then go on to better things. I think the one that always stands out for me is Louis Moult. That's the one that always comes to my mind. If the way in which you're describing him and the goals that he scored, I think it's certainly isn't beyond unrealistic to sign these type of players. It's just whatever Accies are willing to offer. I didn't know that it was a Gateshead player. The only thing I heard was that we weren't willing to offer an extra 25k for whatever non-league player it was, and that's why we couldn't get him. If we're signing a striker, I think it needs to be someone that clearly has shown they can score goals. There's no point in just signing that hasn't scored goals yet, or signing someone that has been about the divisions and scored a handful of goals over the course of different seasons. I think the Ipswich boy that we saw, that
Morris,
that type of signing just wouldn't go down well with me, and it would just be signing someone for the sake of it. And that's why my second option was Nathan Austin.
Yep, he's been suggested a few times by
clearly knows how to score a goal, scores barrels of goals. He's part-time and he's with Celtic Hearts, so he probably has Celtic Hearts. He's probably one of the highest salary part-time players in Scottish football, if I was guessing, because what comes with him is just clearly goals upon goals. But I think we've maybe touched on it previously that I think he has mentioned about maybe wanting to go back full-time and maybe sort of trying to see if he can sort of hit it. I think they had a few spells like Falkirk. He was okay, but he didn't really hit the heights of what he has been with sort of Celtic Hearts, and he's clearly the past couple of seasons just scored goals upon goals, and he's continued to do so now. It's not unrealistic for where we are. We've just been in the top tier for seven years. He's clearly going to score the goals. He's not going to score that amount of goals and then come here not. So I think it makes sense for me. I just don't want us to be signing a striker for the sake of it, just because we feel like what we've got is not good enough.
I think Nathan Austin is a really, really good shout.
That's a good shout because, like you said, realistically, the deals that would be involved for your man for Ipswich, like I say, a young guy coming up to a new country, getting them settled and all that, you probably find that the wages would be very similar to what you'd be.
You need to give him a property.
So if anything, that would maybe cost more. And I think that Nathan Austin, even though he's a League Two player, I think that would excite fans genuinely because it's somebody that scored a ton of goals. I've got a couple more options, two of which actually came into my head when you two were talking. The one that I'm probably most excited about, because it's a player we mentioned this time last year, or in the summer, sorry. Brandon mentioned somebody that, again, when you're saying he's proven that he can score goals at this level, he's not getting a game at the moment, I don't think, and that was Manny Duku. Could be willing to move. We were apparently in for him in the summer.
Yeah, apparently Brian Rice was in.
So the fact that we've kind of made contact, if we have with him, and he might be looking for another option, that might be doable. The other couple that I have, someone again who had a great season last year, Connor Shields.
I've got him up there now.
So it was Queen of the South. He did very, very well, got his move to Motherwell, but from what I've seen when I looked into it, it's only really sub-appearances that he's getting. Don't get me wrong, he is still making sub-appearances, but I think he's started next to no games. Again, I think that would be an exciting signing. The other two, I believe their contracts are up in the summer. First one is Alex Jakubiak. Had a great reputation at Falkirk. He was doing well, I believe, at St Mirren as well, and then got his move to Dundee. I think he's had problems with injuries, so you'll probably find that might be the reason why he's not getting a new contract. He's not played a lot of football in the last kind of 12 months, but as someone who, I believe he's had periods down south where he scored a lot of goals as well. And I think that's somebody who, again, it might not be the most desirable at the moment, but could take a step up if we were to get him. And then the last one that I thought of, again, also from Dundee, is Danny Mullen. A lot of experience in Scottish football. I think he would do well for us. I'm realistic with the fact that I think that whoever we do get might not be the most desirable at the moment, and it won't be the most overwhelming signing, but it will be someone who will grow into it. It was only actually on the game on Saturday, when you think of the season we came up, our forward options were the Mac, Jason Scotland, James Keatons and Tony Andrew. That's the kind of depth.
And Andy Ryan.
Sorry, I meant to say I said that instead of Tony Andrew. Those are the options that you need for this kind of league. We need to start planning from next season. I think this year's going to be a write-off as it is. Hopefully we stay away from trouble at the bottom, but in my opinion, we need to start. I've said this countless times on podcasts, the way this season's went is down to not being prepared, and we need to start looking at next season, and we need that striker is one of those key things that we do need.
Although we've been crying out for a striker for so long, I don't know how many times we've headbutted our computer screens, our phones, doing these podcasts saying we need a striker. I don't think a striker's a priority right now. at this present moment. I think what you're saying, going into the pre-contract market and getting a striker so we are better prepared for next season, I totally agree with. I just feel like the way in which Taylor sets up and the chances that do come for us sort of strikers, I just feel like right back in a midfielder is the priority at the moment. Although I would love us to sign all 4 of the positions which we're saying, I think we need to be realistic and knowing that we're not going to do that. I want us to sign a striker and for it to be someone that excites the fans, because I don't think we've signed someone in a good period of time where when we've done the signing announcement, it sort of came as a sort of surprise to the fans. It's gave the fans a bit of a lift, and I think that's ultimately what kind of we need at the present moment. The fans, they need some sort of lift. I think it came a bit with Rankin and he sort of steadied the boat slightly, but we're just so inconsistent at the moment. And I feel like if the board were to sort of, they did say obviously at the start of the season, whatever it takes, that's been shown to be a load of rubbish if I'm being honest. And then they did come out and say they were going to spend money this window. We saw the amount of money that we've brought in, both via UEFA with that sort of 250 grand, and with got parachute payments for getting relegated. So there's money there. There is money there, and it'd just be nice for the board to invest and sort of bring someone in or a couple of players in which us as fans are calling out for, and something that would sort of change the sort of atmosphere a bit and sort of give the fans something to sort of cheer about before the end of the window happens. Because I don't know about you, but I can't remember the last player that maybe Temps a couple of seasons ago when we signed him. That was probably maybe even Josh Mullen. When we signed Josh Mullen, that was a one that I think everybody's surprised by, and sort of majority of fans took to that well. But it's just we don't really get that feeling very often when we sign a player that we're proper buzzing about it, and it'd be good for them to do that.
Just on the positions, obviously, so we've agreed that these are the positions that we think need to strengthen. We've touched on it a little bit, but I do agree with what you guys have said. I think a goalkeeper is absolutely a necessity. I think Ryan Fulton cannot be our number one. I think we need to get an established number one. But as you said, we Hilton's loan ended at the end of the season. Ryan Fulton will be our number one next season. I've got no doubt about that. If we bring anybody in, it will be a backup to Ryan Fulton. And then Jamie Smith will be your third choice, or maybe it'll be Jamie Smith your second, then we bring in a third choice. I think that's the reason it's going to go down. Right back, we absolutely desperately need, because Jamie Hamilton, he's getting rinsed on Twitter recently, but listen, he's still a fantastic player. He's a very, very good right back, and he's a very, very good centre back, and he's a decent right back. But we do need an out and out right back there just to solidify that. Obviously, and we're going to be losing Jamie in the summer by the looks of it as well. Midfielder is an absolute necessity. We've got to remember we've got Scott Martin and Lewis Spence now come back from injury as well, apparently. That's 2 more names we can add into midfield. But I think to get a midfielder in, we'll need to lose 1 or 2 from the midfield we've already got. I don't see the club doing that in January, especially with the 2 coming back from injury. And then obviously the striker situation we've talked about as well so many times. We need a goal scorer. And David Moyle's working very, very hard, and he's performed very well recently. But as David said, he's not the one scoring the goals. Andy Ryan has done well, but realistically, was Andy Ryan brought in to be our star striker at the start of the season? I don't think so. And Andy Winter, someday, I totally agree with what David said. He is probably what Andy Ryan was when we went up. A goalkeeper's a necessity, but I don't see the club doing that, especially not until the summer. And I think Ryan Fulton will remain our number one. A right back's an absolute necessity, and if you don't get that done, then we're struggling. A midfielder, in my opinion, won't be a priority for them, given the 2 that are coming back from injury. And a striker, we know the club are after a striker. They've said quite publicly that they need a goal scorer. So we know that's what they're after. I just, if we're being realistic, I think there are certain players that we've talked about today that the club won't go for. I also think there are certain positions that the club won't even be looking at because of the situation we're in currently.
We're crying out with someone to be a leader, and that's what we were constantly told. We said that this window that what they feel the necessity is to bring in some leaders. The 2 positions that should happen are a right back and a striker. Midfielders, that's a leader. I think that really needs to happen. It's a necessity, and keeper is a necessity. But when you take a back step and actually think about it, think right back and strikers what we're going to get. And we struggled obviously to get a right back. We don't get paid to do that. That's not our job to do this. So hopefully that they've done their research and there is someone that sort of gets offered to them, or they find someone that sort of fits the mould of how the sort of style we want to play, and we can get players back into their normal position and hopefully back playing to capable of what they are. When you're a goal scorer, there's no point in just signing a striker for the sake of it. Us fans, we're a very moody bunch and we moan a lot, but I don't think there's many Accies fans that would just want us to just sign a player for the sake of it, and that's what some of these sort of players that we get taunted with and we see we're linked with are. Just don't waste the money on spending penny pinching and just sort of spending bottom of the barrel amounts just for the sake of getting someone. Just go and get someone that's going to get the fans a bit excited. Hopefully we'd reap the rewards of it and just continue to push up the table and look forward to next season.
They jumped on the fact that they wanted it publicised that we want players in from the 1st of January. That's because they know they had the O'Reilly and the Brown deals already tied up at that point. So it's not that they're changing the way they're operating. Granted, they did, but those were already put in. And then it's the other thing is we're going to be spending money on players. Ellis Brown fee could be pennies. On record, they said they'll spend money on transfers and they'll get them done early. They've already done what they've promised and we're not any better for it. The Kai Kennedy deal, that's something that obviously when Rankin came in, I believe he had a report in the paper saying that we need to replace David Templeton. I think Kai Kennedy's deal is very much what we've always heard, that when we've got our business done, if anything else presents itself, I think that's exactly what's happened with the Kennedy deal. I don't think we had any intention of going for that player. So probably you find that presented to us is the only reason we got him was because nobody else did at that point and he was available. Is because you've seen as soon as McInnes came in, the reports were there linking him to Kilmarnock, and then they went for Mackay for Hibs instead. So you probably find that just presented itself to us, and that's why. But me personally, I'm happy with that signing, but it's completely pointless. It's probably a good wage, and he's not going to be with us any more than 6 months. He's not going to stay next season. He's not going to extend. Look at players that are out of contract. Again, a couple of names I saw were the likes of Alan Forrest and Craig Sibbald at Livy. Probably for the same wages, you could get these guys in permanently. And those are the type of signings, if you're saying, listen, we're going to be going for it next year, Alan Forrest is a perfect replacement for that David Templeton role. Push the boat out for someone like that. That's more of a statement than getting a guy for Rangers on loan for no more than 6 months when we don't really have anything to push for. I've got one last thing that came to mind though, when we're talking about a right back and muscle in midfield. Do you think we could do a lot worse than getting somebody like Grant Gillespie back?
Personally, wouldn't be super interested in seeing Grant Gillespie come back. It was a good utility player when he was here. He's doing well in the Queen's Park team, but if it was revealed tomorrow that he is signed, I wouldn't get out of bed.
There's a lot of players that, as I mentioned, we could sign, and it would just, it's not really bettering us off, but it's just sort of adding maybe players to our squad. I think someone else I saw was Rico Kitongo for right back. He's obviously left Airdrie, someone that's played with us before. And these are players, that we could bring them in for the sort of positions that we've played them in before. But is it really going to be someone that, like you said, proper betters us off? Ultimately, these players are still better in that wrong position than the players that you'd be bringing in for what's meant to be their right position. So that's why we're obviously asking for these players to get played there, because it's the best option we've got. I think what David said is, pre-contract is a really important thing this season, and if we're going with whatever the club are saying with regards to sort of thinking about progress in the future, then I'll be very interested to see if they actually do go down that route and stick to their words. But like I keep saying, I'll not hold my breath.
All right, well, you've heard our suggestions. You can let us know what you think of our suggestions and other fans in the comments, of course, down below. Thank you very much for watching. We hope you did enjoy, and we'll see you soon.